Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something totally wild, a source that explores the math of divine connection. It's this incredibly fascinating thought experiment that somehow takes the high school math we all sweated over and merges it with, well, profound human philosophy. Let's get right into it.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Can calculus actually measure our connection to the divine? It sounds almost impossible, right? Usually math feels pretty rigid, kind of cold. But today, we're going to see if concepts like geometry and derivatives can actually map out our deeply emotional and spiritual experiences. Can an actual equation explain a piece of our human nature? So the author of our source material proposes a really fundamental premise. Think about an angle, not just as a geometric measurement you need a plastic protractor for, but as a relationship. We've got me stretching out on the horizontal line, and God positioned up there on the upper trajectory. And that angle between them, let's call it angle x, represents our spiritual proximity. It's a literal mathematical expression of a relationship between two entities. How cool is that?
But as we all know, human nature means this relationship is never static. We don't just pick an angle in life and stay locked there forever, do we? Sometimes we feel super closely aligned with our highest ideals, and other times, well, we feel pretty far away. That angle is constantly fluctuating over time. And as the source points out, when you take all those possible combinations of feeling close and feeling distant, varying from 0 all the way around to 360 degrees, you're essentially tracing out the foundation of a continuous, looping circle.
To really grasp the depth of this idea, we've got to break the metaphor down into its mathematical parts on a standard graph. On one side, sweeping along the horizontal axis, we have cosine x. This represents our earthly life, our current orientation, our focus on ourselves, the daily grind. On the flip side, running up the vertical axis, is sine x. This represents elevation, our highest spiritual alignment, or basically the ideal of where we should be. So we're constantly navigating between the horizontal push of the world and the vertical pull of the divine.
Now, before the math gets a little too deep here, the original text messages from our source include this absolutely great little note. It just says, "Life in Mathematics," with a couple of laughing emojis. And honestly, it's a helpful reminder. This is really just a creative, deeply human thought experiment to help us understand ourselves. We aren't sitting in a dry math lecture, we're just playfully looking at human existence through the lens of numbers.
Okay, so by anchoring these abstract ideas onto a standard recognizable unit circle, everything starts to click. We can see exactly how a single angle, let's call it theta or x, dictates both our horizontal earthly position, that's the cosine line, and our vertical spiritual position, the sine line. They are inextricably linked by that one single point, point P, which essentially represents us. And because a unit circle has a radius of exactly 1 unit, the math gets beautifully, elegantly simple. That radius is the hypotenuse of the triangle we form. So, since cosine x is the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse, it just becomes our exact horizontal distance. In the exact same way, sine x becomes our exact vertical distance. It's like our earthly and spiritual orientations are just perfectly, cleanly locked right onto these two distinct axes.
This perfectly illustrates the incredibly dynamic nature of this circle as we go about living our lives. Imagine that angle x getting smaller and smaller, the line just flattening out toward the horizontal. As it shrinks, our vertical distance, our sine x, also shrinks, eventually hitting 0. Our spiritual alignment basically bottoms out as we focus entirely on the earthly horizontal. But if that angle x gets bigger and steeper, sine x grows, bringing us closer to a maximum vertical value of 1. It is a constant push and pull between our worldly life and vertical alignment, hinting that we're all really just searching for a balanced middle path.
Now this gets even more interesting when we pivot from basic geometry straight into calculus. Don't worry, stay with me. The notation d over dx is just the derivative. In plain terms, it's the rate of change over time. It asks a really dynamic, practical question. If there is a tiny, microscopic change in our horizontal life, our dx, how does that micro-adjustment affect our overall relationship angle?
And that brings us to the absolutely critical question, expressed as a calculus equation, d cos x over dx. Translated into everyday English, this represents how much our horizontal earthly orientation actively affects our divine relationship. Think about it. If we change something in our day-to-day life, if we shift our earthly priorities just a little bit, how much does it actually impact our vertical ideal? How do our personal, worldly shifts ripple out to alter the entire spiritual picture?
When we track the rate of change of the cosine curve, notice how it perfectly maps to the inverted sine curve. It's literally a mirror image. This isn't just some abstract equation floating in the ether. This detailed tracking acts as the undeniable geometric proof for the massive philosophical conclusion the author reaches next.
All right, here is where the whole shebang comes together. Step 1 is the mathematical truth. The derivative of cosine x equals negative sine x. Step 2 is the metaphorical truth. The more preference we give to our earthly selves on that horizontal axis, the exact corresponding negative impact it has on our vertical orientation to God. The cold hard math elegantly, and maybe a bit shockingly, mirrors the philosophical cost of human selfishness.
Our source ends on a really provocative thought. We learn it, but it's a universal truth. And man, it leaves you wondering. Maybe the academic math we mindlessly memorize in school isn't just a set of arbitrary rules to pass a test. Maybe, just maybe, these ancient equations are actually reflecting the fundamental universal laws of human nature, morality, and our deep connection to the world around us. It is certainly something to chew on the next time you see a simple graph.